Hey, happy Saturday. It's Greasy Creek Gal. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that God's been showing me about myself. And I'm sure this applies to a lot of you that watch my videos. But some of y'all know some of my backstory and why I share the things that I share. You know, I write about divorce, pain, different things that we go through and experience because if I share my journey, it's going to help somebody in theirs, and it lets people know um, that other people has been through that, and it gives them encouragement and inspiration, and lets them know that they're not alone. And I've had several people inbox me with different messages and stuff, and I appreciate every message that I get, and I respond to every message that I receive, and I just share my journey in the healing process and my journey with Jesus to encourage you all and to let you all know that you are not alone because all of us have um, things that we have to deal with. So, as many of you all know, I was raised in the home of an alcoholic, and he was very violent at times, and he would go into these binges and drink for weeks. And he would come home and he'd be very violent, and he shot guns, and he just started shooting in the house. He would shoot dynamite and different stuff. And there's times I can remember when I was 4 and 5 that, and throughout my childhood, that I would be hiding under the bed with my cousins in sheer terror because he was just shooting, and we'd be terrified. My grandmother would be hiding. She was terrified, and she couldn't get to us a lot of times because he was just shooting his guns. And if we got in the way, it's just by the grace of God that none of us was killed, honestly. And there were times there I couldn't tell you the number of times that we climbed out of the bedroom windows, ran up the side of the mountain, and hid under a cliff. We also had a coal mines that was behind the house, and we hid in the mines from him until he passed out. And Granny would sneak down and see that he'd passed out, and then we would come down the mountain and we would sneak in the house and be as quiet as we could because we didn't want to wake him up, and we'd go to sleep. And that went on for years. And as a little girl, there were times that I have a vivid imagination. I know there's people that say that they don't imagine things, they don't have thoughts in their head. There's stuff going on in my head all the time, and I can't imagine somebody having a mind that did not have an imagination. But as a little girl, my imagination was somebody's going to come in and choose me and rescue me from this hell that I was in. Well, guess what? Nobody came. So, and that's the thing. And one of the things that God showed me is uh, as we grow and as a woman, when you get your heart broke and you go through divorce and different things, and you get hurt, you start tucking away pieces of yourself. And as you tuck away pieces of yourself, you tuck that away, and it's a protection, it's survival mode. And I've been living in survival mode for a while. But you go into survival mode and you tuck away those pieces that's been hurt, and you tuck away pieces of yourself, and you hide them in a effort to protect them so that you don't get hurt that way no more. So, and one of the things that God showed me was, He took me back to where I was a little girl, and how I used to imagine and daydream of somebody coming in and rescuing me to choose me to protect me, and no one came. And then He took me to where the woman I am today, and how I tuck away little pieces of myself to protect me. And then in that, I saw myself as I am now. I went to that little girl and I picked that little girl up in my arms, and I told her, nobody's going to choose you. Nobody's going to protect you. Nobody's coming to rescue you, because nobody did. And I took that little girl and I carried her to the woman, of all the pieces that I've tucked away from all the hurt and the heartache. And I placed that little girl in her arms, and I said, but I do. I choose you. I will protect you. And that was very profound, because not only in that, with me telling, the woman of all the different pieces that I've tucked away, and I go back to my childhood and say, I choose you. It was like all of a sudden there was no more pieces. I was just one with myself. And in that, Jesus has chosen me, and he protects me, and he rescues me. Because anytime I go through something, Jesus is always there. He's always there. He sees me through it. He provides. He's my protector. He's my provider. He guides me. He gives me wisdom. He gives me neat little words to share with you all about trees and nature and all that stuff. And when he showed that to me, of the little girl and the woman, of all the pieces that I tucked away as a, survival, it was a way of protecting myself. It's kind of like you build up walls, And when I said, when I was there, I could see it in my mind as you were saying, as I went over to pick up that little girl, which was me as a little girl, carrying it to the woman that I tucked away to protect, and saying, but I choose you, is like I became one with myself. And all those pieces that I tucked away and all that stuff just fell off. It was like a total release, and I was whole. And in that, as the years went by, I don't want y'all to think ill of my grandfather. My grandfather was he had his faults. I mean, we all do. And I realized as I got older and I went into nursing and started studying different things, I realized my grandfather was a World War II Navy vet. He drove the boat from the battleship to the shore. He took the soldiers from the battleship to the shore. So he had a very dangerous job. But I realized as I got older that my grandfather, like many of the men on Greasy Creek and around the world, they suffered from PTSD. But at that time, in the 40s, they didn't know what PTSD was. And I'm sure the military had no clue how to treat that. So, as a coping mechanism, they turned to alcohol. And a lot of the alcoholics, a lot of the drunks on our creek were World War II Army vets. And that was their way of coping with the things that they saw and faced in World War II. And that gave me a lot of understanding. And, me and my grandfather, we made peace, as I grew older. And we made peace. And our relationship really grew. And, when I was 30, I had my first child, and she was crazy about him. And we just really, made peace. And he, got to where he told me he loved me, and I loved him dearly. And the family will tell you I was one of his favorites. And to me, he was a great man. He taught me a lot. And even though I had not so good of a childhood, but I did. Because, I started Greasy Creek Gal page. That was a challenge in prayer time, because I was so negative about my childhood. And I was like, all these people talk about their childhood and they don't see any good. And I'm like, I don't see any good in mine, because all I was focused on was the negative. And in that, I felt like God said, I want you to start writing about the positives of growing up in Eastern Kentucky. And that's how Greasy Creek Gal came to pass. And I think I started my page in 2000. 2008 or 2009, and I started writing the positives. And at first, it was very hard to find anything positive because when you're so negative, you can't hardly see the positive. And and it started out kind of shallow at first. And then I started sharing, things I used to do as a kid, things we used to do, going in the mountains, playing in the creek, building forts, and all these things, and chasing cows when the cows got out, and, just started sharing all these stories. And it changed my outlook and it changed my mindset to where I was no longer negative, but I was seeing the silver lining and I was seeing the good and all the bad. And now my outlook, that's what I see. When I see things that happen, when I go through things, I try to see the good in everything. I'm just like, okay, what's happening here? What's this trying to teach me? And are we going to go around the mountain again, or are we going to learn the lesson? So, and that's the thing. And I think from starting the Greasy Creek Ohio page in 2009 to the woman I am today, I have grown so much spiritually, mentally, emotionally, even through all the, through the divorce and my second divorce and all just the heartaches and the pains and my healing journey, going through all that. I mean, God has been faithful. And He has seen me through so much, and He has healed my heart, and He has taken me on a journey um, that has allowed me to experience some wonderful things in my life. And I share parts of that journey with you guys. And one of the things is, not too long ago, I was tucking away pieces of myself. And I'm like, what? And God showed me this. And we're not to tuck away pieces of ourselves, and we tuck those away a lot of times. We tuck those away because we're choosing to settle. Think about it. When you get hurt, when someone hurts you for whatever reason, if they reject you or whatever, you tuck those away so they can't hurt you anymore, but you're still settling for that person or, whatever the situation is. And the Lord showed me. And so I refuse to settle. And that's where I am as a woman. I know what I want, and I've told God what I want. And, and the thing is, do you settle? Do you tuck away a piece of yourself and settle for what's in front of you? Or do you trust God and you walk away from that and you don't tuck away those parts of yourself? And you choose yourself, you choose you, and you protect you by walking away. And that's the key. And in that particular situation, I walked away. I said, no, I choose me. I'm protecting me. I choose me. And I walked away. And God said, do you trust me? And I said, yes. And I walked away. And I think as people, as men and women, when we're out here in this world and we're dealing with people and we deal with people who hurt us, the question is, are you going to tuck that piece of you away? You're going to put a wall up and you're going to shield yourself and stay? Or are you going to choose yourself and walk away? And I think that's the key for all of us, is you do not settle. You make a list. You sit down and you say, this is what I want. This is what I expect. And you pray for God's will. Because God knows your heart. You just hand Him your heart and say, here's my heart, God. Take care of it. And He will. And He will reveal these truths to you. And so moving forward, I've had to make some tough decisions over these last couple of years because you know what? I refuse to tuck any piece of me away anymore. I'm not tucking, I'm walking away. You know why? Because I choose me. God chose me, I chose me. And sometimes God would choose you, but you don't choose yourself because you'll tuck yourself away and you'll settle for less than you deserve when you deserve so much more. And that's where we are as men and women. A lot of times we find ourselves settling and tucking and hiding pieces of ourselves away and settling when we should say, no, I choose me. I love me more, and I'm walking away. And I tell you, when I started choosing me and I started walking away and I said, no, I love me more. I may care about you. I may even love you. But I choose me because I love me more. And I think when we start doing that as men and women, when we start doing that in our relationships, when you're out here dating or whatever, and you start um, um, dating, and somebody does something, and you have a red flag. You know, I done a video about red flags, and in my life, if I have one red flag, I'm out. Those red flags are there for a reason. And if you push that red flag away, you're settling for what that red flag is showing you. So if you get a red flag, if you're out here and you're on a date and you get a red flag, something's off, if this person's lying to you, you're settling for the lies and you're not walking in truth and honesty. You're going to settle for what that red flag is warning you about. And when you settle for that, it's not going to last. Because if they lie to you on your first or second date, come on, they're not honest people. What's their angle? So if somebody lies to you on your first or second date and you get this warning, you need to think, if you're so comfortable lying to me on our first or second date, you'll never walk in truth for the entire relationship. And if you get married, they're not going to be honest with you in the marriage. And above all things, I value truth, honesty, integrity, character. I value all those. And if a man's not walking in truth, if he's not walking in integrity, he doesn't have good intentions, I'm out. And that's how you have to be. Guys, if a woman is not walking in truth, if you start getting red flags and you ask questions and you get these red flags, you need to ask, am I going to settle for these lies? Or am I going to walk away and find a woman who walks in truth, honesty, integrity? Which one's going to last? And that's what you got to ask yourself. Which one is going to last? What do you want in your life? Do you want a person that lies and does whatever, deceives? Or do you want a person of truth, integrity, loves Jesus? I mean, a lot of people out here love Jesus and they live like the devil. A lot of people out here love Jesus and they have bad intentions for you. A lot of people out here love Jesus and they will lie to you to your face multiple times. That's why you have to pray. That's why you have to have a prayer life with Jesus. You have to walk with him because those red flags are the Holy Spirit's warning. Hey, something's wrong here. And when I get a red flag, I'm out. I don't have to know what it is. A lot of times I don't. A lot of times I may have a red flag, something's wrong here. I don't need to know what's wrong. I just need to know that the Holy Spirit said, hey Pat, something's wrong here. That's all I need to know. I'm out. Gone. And, there's times I pulled up in a store or was invited to different places and went there, had a red flag, and I leave. I don't need to know why. All I need to know is that the Holy Spirit thought enough of me to say, hey, Pat, something's wrong here. That's all I need to know. So, and that's how you need to operate as a man and as a woman in Jesus Christ. You need to have a strong prayer life. You need to talk to God every day. You need to give Him your heart, and you need to trust Him. Trust Him always. Trust Him to guide you. Trust Him in His perfect wisdom. I pray for wisdom every day. Because let me tell you, Pat Rigney and her own self, Greasy Creek Gal, I will miss it. I mess up. I make bad decisions. I mean, look at husband number 2. That was a bad decision. I think myself as an intelligent woman, but sometimes I surprise myself. So, husband number 2, bad decision. So, but I learned a lot from that. And in that, I also learned you got to stay prayed up. You got to make sure you walk with Jesus daily. You got to make sure you listen to those red flags. And you have to choose when someone hurts you or you get a red flag, are you going to settle? Because when you decide to stay, you decide to settle when there's better out there. And that's the problem. A lot of people settle. And you know what? You're not choosing yourself. You're not protecting yourself. You're settling. So, I choose me. And that's where I'm at. I choose me. I protect me. God chose me. He guides me. And when I get a red flag, when I'm very honest, and if you ask me a question, when you ask that question, you need to ask yourself, do you really want to know the truth? Because if you ask me a question, that's what you're going to get, good, bad, or ugly. And I'm going to walk in my truth. I'm going to choose me. I'm going to protect me. So if I get a red flag, I'm gone. I'm walking away. And I have walked away. And I can tell you in one of my prayer times back in November and in March, 2 different times, I was out here on my deck. I like to go out there and sit at night, look up and just kick back and look up at the stars and just pray. And a lot of times I just cry and say, here, God, here's my heart. But in November and in March, God said, you're going to suffer a loss. And both times I did. I suffered a loss. And in November, He said, you're going to suffer a loss. And He said, do you trust me? And before I could say yes, I felt this big shift in my spirit. And it was just like change. And I was like, I do. And I just felt like He just took my heart and took care of things. In March, I was out here praying. There was some things I was questioning, things I needed guidance on. And again, He said, you're going to suffer a loss. And I said, but I trust you. And in that trust, things were revealed in His wisdom. Because when you walk with Jesus and you ask Him for truth, He will always reveal truth to you. And in this particular situation, I chose me and I walked away. And I'm no longer tucking pieces of me away. And I'm no longer hiding parts of myself as a survival, as a safety mechanism to protect myself. So I choose me. And I think as men and women, when it comes to life, we have to sit down and we have to write out. And I did. I got a notebook and a pen and I sat down and wrote out what I want for the rest of my life. This is what I want. And I told God, I said, here's my list, God. This is what I want. And I'm not settling for anything less. And when things come across my path, if they don't meet my criteria, I choose me. Because somewhere out there, God has His best for me, and I'm going to wait on God. Because if you wait on God, you're waiting on His best, and you're not settling. And I think a lot of times we settle out of fear because we don't want to be alone. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. And every time you ignore a red flag, you're settling. You're settling and you're saying, hey, that red flag's okay. You're settling and you're saying, how you treated me is okay when it's not. And that's where we are as people. So, what I'm asking for you guys to do today is to ask yourself, what do you want? Sit down and make a list. Write down what you want in your partner, in your spouse. What do you want? What do you want in a wife? What do you want in a husband? What do you want for your life? What are your goals? What are your desires? What are your dreams? What word has God given you? And how are you going to go about fulfilling that? So, what do you want? And so I sat down with a notebook and I sat down and wrote out everything that I want. And then I sat down and prayed about it and said, God, this is everything I want. And the Bible says you have not because you don't ask. I ask. I mean, what's the worst thing you say? No. I mean, because if He says no, He's got something better. Because twice He said, do you trust me? And I said, yes. And I do trust Him. And today I am more at peace with myself as a woman of God, as a daughter, than I ever been. I'm content. I don't worry anymore. I mean, 2 years ago, worried all the time. Last year, worried all the time. These last couple of months, there's no worry. Because I just sit back and say, okay, God, you got this. And He does. And He provides every time. And because I said, you know what? You're my Father. You're my friend. You're my protector. And you know everything about me. And you know that I don't have this. I can't do this. And He has not failed me. So, and that's because I trust Him. Because He has never let me down. And that is powerful. So, I trust Him. I depend on Him. And I believe everything He tells me. And I choose me. Just like He has chosen me. And in order to protect me, I have to choose me every time. So, and you do that when you walk away from the red flags. Because every time, if someone hurts you, if somebody's mean to you, if they verbally abusive or anything like that, if you get red flags, anytime you allow that to continue, you are settling for that. You're telling that person, it's okay. That's okay that you reject me. It's okay that you hurt me. It's okay that I'm not a priority in your life. It's okay for you to ignore my calls, or it's okay for you to talk down to me. When you stay in that situation, you're settling, and you're telling that individual it's okay. And it's not, because what you do is you tuck away pieces of yourself and you put up walls, and it's not okay. So the question is, are you going to choose yourself and walk away, or are you going to stay and settle? Because I'm telling you, there's better out there. And when you wait on God and His best, it's a win-win situation. So I encourage you today, this weekend, sit down, make your list, write what you want, and then sit down and ask God for it. Ask Him for His wisdom and His guidance. If you don't have a prayer life with Him, if you don't have a relationship where you talk to Him, I mean, when I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, I lay there and talk to Him. I may drift off back to sleep, but I just start talking to Him. It's about your relationship with Him. And I don't think you'll be able to trust Him until you have a relationship with Him and until you go through things with Him. And when you do, that's when that trust is developed, because if you come from a traumatic childhood and you have lots of hardships and difficulties, it's hard for you to trust anyone, even God. It's hard for you to trust Him because, as you grew up, there was times I'm like, I didn't know who God was. And people would talk about this Jesus, but I'm like, if He exists, why did I have to go through all this other stuff? But that was a kid mentality because I was a kid. So as I grew, and when I got saved on Easter Sunday in 1992 and started growing as a Christian, as a woman of God, and got married and had a wonderful mother-in-law. She was just absolute beautiful woman, strong woman of God, served God since she was like 12 or 13 years old. And it was through her love and her wisdom and her guidance that I grew a lot as a Christian woman. And I started seeing God as a father and started seeing Him as someone that I could trust and depend on. And then over the years, as I grew spiritually, I realized He is my Father. So, and I can trust Him. When I went through my first divorce, He saw me through everything. He provided. He took care of everything. Um, he walked me through that healing journey. He healed my heart, and He took care of everything. And He still does today because I trust Him completely. And because of that trust, I don't have any worries. I don't fear. Um, it's just a total freedom. And the fact that He showed me all these different things about my life and how I took pieces of myself away and how that started in my childhood as young as 4 or 5 years old. And then how, you know, I decided to choose me and I walked away. I didn't settle. And that's the key. Because whatever you settle for, that is what you tolerate. And that's what when you settle, you're telling the other person, it's okay for you to do that. It's okay when it's not. So I encourage you today to think about, do you choose yourself or do you walk away? And the answer is you always choose you and you walk away and you trust in Jesus. Because when you walk away, you're telling God, I'm not settling, I'm waiting on you. Because if you settle, then guess what? You're going to end up in a mess. So it's when you settle, it's not going to be good. You're going to be miserable. So, and then you're going to have to deal with the choice that you made, and you're going to have to suffer the consequences of that choice, because our choices and our prayer life, God isn't a genie where He just snaps His finger and makes everything okay. We don't learn anything from that. We learn from the journey. We learn from the choices that we make. We learn from our mistakes, and we learn by walking it out with Jesus, one step at a time, one day at a time. And there were times it was 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time. And those times it was that bad. So, and that's where you are. So today, I'm telling you, I choose me. And Jesus chose me. And if there's a red flag, if something's off, and if they don't meet my expectations, I'm out. I walk away because I choose me. because I'm not settling anymore. And that's the message I want to release to you guys today, is to ask yourself, what do you want for the rest of your life? What is your expectations? What are your desires? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? If you're looking for a mate or a partner, what are your expectations? What do you need? What do you want? And you release that to God. You make your list. You write it out. You know, in Habakkuk 3, it says, make the vision, write it down. You know, write your vision down. Write your vision down for what you want in your life. What your expectations are. What your hopes are. What your dreams are. And say, God, here it is. Here are my hopes. Here are my dreams. This is what I want. And choose you, and don't settle. Refuse to settle anymore. That's the word, is stop settling. Because anytime you settle, you're saying it's okay when it's not. There's so much better out there. God tells us in I think it's Job 21. I know the plans I have for you. My mind went blank. But it says, I know the plans that I have for you, and they're for His goodness. They're good plans for us, but it's for us to prosper and to grow. You know, a lot of people forget about that, the rest of that. But read the rest of it. But it's for us. They're good. They're good plans. They're for us to prosper and grow. And it's God, just like our earthly fathers, most of them anyway, they only want good for their kids. Same with our Heavenly Father. He only wants good for us. So, when you settle, you're not settling for His good. You're not settling for your good. So, you're accepting. When you settle, you're accepting and saying, hey, this is okay, when it's not. So, always choose you. Love yourself. Choose yourself. And know, write your vision down. Make it plain. Post it on your fridge. Post it in the bathroom on the mirror. Write your vision down. This is what I want. This is my hopes. This is my dreams. This is what I want for the rest of my life. Pray about it. Give it to God. Hand Him your heart and say, here, God, it's yours. Do what you need to do. Trust in Him and watch and see how He moves in your life. Watch for all these little wow moments. You know, I posted a word about the wow moments, and we're going to have many of those. And each week on Sunday, I think it's on Sundays, I usually post, hey, these are my wow moments for the week. So, and they may not seem that big to you, but they are to me, and that's all that matters. So, I encourage you today to choose you, because God has chosen you, and refuse to settle for anything less. Make your vision, write it down, make it plain. Put it before God. Trust in Him, and just wait on His timing. So, you guys be blessed. I hope you enjoy this word. I hope it encourages you. And I hope y'all have a wonderful Saturday evening. And I hope you have a great Sunday. So, be blessed.